Richard Cheetham, thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. You're welcome, Lewis.
So I want to dive straight into coaching philosophy, and I want to start off by asking, what is your coaching philosophy?
Very well. I suppose that my philosophy is a way of being. It's not necessarily a list of things, it's how you are. So one of the things that is, I always want to make it a memorable experience, positive memorable experience of being coached. But there's enjoyment. I put brackets fun after that, because sometimes it's all fun, but we're not learning. I think, well, let's call it an enjoyable learning environment that reflect on positively, that celebrates success in all its forms.
I heard you talk about in an interview before, when you were saying the first few weeks, especially at the university, you were saying the first few weeks you can almost disregard the learning within the first few weeks and really get to know people in that. And there was it was actually really refreshing to hear. And I was then putting myself back to experiences I've been, and you think day one, sometimes people or coaches want to go straight in with knowledge, maybe even to place a little bit of credibility from their side and go, right, we're going to throw some knowledge and we're going to do some exercises, we're going to do this. But actually taking the time to get to know someone. And it was funny that the timing of me having this podcast with you, because I'd done something recently with a couple of clients where I'd chosen to spend 1 or 2 sessions with them, just purely getting to know them. And they'd almost look like you're not doing anything. You're not actually going anywhere in inverted commas, sort of progression of skill or development. But actually, what I was hoping, and then sort of what you cemented in the conversation, was you're actually developing the relationship to do all of that better, further. So yeah, it was very interesting when you spoke about spending that first few weeks. What is it that you're trying to do within those first few weeks when you are working with people to get to understand them?
You made a really interesting point that we think in week 1 lecture, when we have to validate ourselves with subject content. Here we are, this is a subject, this is our degree. And I understand that. But equally, put yourself in the shoes of the learner who's going to be there for 3 years, who maybe it's their first time away from home, in an alien environment, doesn't know anybody. And, if I'm going to work with somebody for 3 years, without being intrusive in the questioning, because it's not about being nosy, it's actually just digging a little bit deeper into who's in front of me, what their background is, variety of different things, and no one particular question, like where are you from, what's your favourite sport, they're important questions, they're unimportant. But I ask other questions that give you a little bit of a narrative behind why that person's there. And the knowing of somebody is a very important in connecting with someone, because there could be that instant connection with someone across the room, instant connection with myself, what shared interest, where we, somebody went to the same secondary school as me, obviously many years apart. And if we are going to coach somebody, teach somebody, spend time with somebody, then the knowledge just comes second. The connection comes first. The understanding of rapport, trust, openness, those are really important foundations before we move on to the second piece. Otherwise, it becomes process-like. I walk in, you teach me, I learn and graduate. And I don't really want to have an environment that is like that. I want to have it more of a nurturing environment where people, I always remember the first lecture with students, and I always report it to them when they graduate, and they always remind me of moments. And that for me is priceless in what I said about my philosophy about creating memorable experiences.
So if that was someone walking into your first lecture, what might that look like?
Yeah, I think what John did in the first lecture is I have a game, it's called a tattoo game. Apologies for the name. I made the game up. I call it a tattoo game. if you ask a group of people, and I have plenty of examples of this, if anybody's got a tattoo in the room, and then people put their hand up, yeah, tattoos are an insight into people. Tattoos generally have around about 5 themes. They are allegiance, the team they support, and this family, births of children, relationships, geography, sometimes where they live, sometimes some of their culture. Pacific Islanders, for example, have the cultural symbolism that goes with tattoos. And then always a funny one, which is mistakes, where someone's got a tattoo, they wish they hadn't done it. An ex-partner or a night out, for example. And that opens up, because people have tattoos it's their story. They're wearing their story. And that, then I said, well, give me another theme. And then people throw another theme. And because they choose the themes, I can develop a question from that theme. If I come with my questions, well, they're my questions. If the group has curiosity, very much around, I'm asking this question because I want to know where I sit with other people. So it could be, does anybody else play a musical instrument? They want to know, they want to feel where they fit, who's around them, where their connections are.
It's interesting you say that, because I've got my tattoo here, and that is it's of my cap number for Sussex. So I'm the 696th player to have played for Sussex, and it's the Roman numerals of that number with the Sussex emblem, the badge behind it, and the martlets. And I got that inspired by an old teammate of mine, and he'd played for his country, and he had his country on his chest, and he had his cap number on his chest. And I asked him, why is it there? And he said, because that's my story. That's a part of my story, and that's a part of me. And I even remember then thinking, well, even the scars that you have on your body, I've got all of these different scars from moments that I've had, whether it's playing sport or just silly accidents that I've had along the way, or surgeries that I've had to have, and each one is a story. And I used to then think, well, I would only get a tattoo if it had a story behind it. But every tattoo does have a story, even if it was you were pissed up somewhere and you just decided to have it. That's a story, right? That's a story that you've got. And I think even those ones, they connect you on that level. And it's those little idiosyncrasies, the scars, literally those stories that we have that will connect us the best. And that's an interesting game that you've decided to play.
You're wearing a story, and that's immediately, without me knowing anything about you, that question about tattoo. Look, how long have you spoken about something? Your face lights up. You recall that moment. You start to talk about how it happened. It's a very proud moment, a hugely proud moment to have something like that. And so you're wearing your story, and imagine a room full of people who do have them, but not everybody has to have them. Because then you develop it further and you say, well, is anybody thinking of having one? And then if you had it, what would it be? But so you start to connect people, and force people, and if I had one, it would be, so my daughter's the 3rd of October 2010. Yeah, that would be my tattoo if I had one. And then we joke around, why wouldn't you have it? And they say, well, I haven't left home yet, so I don't want to tell my parents, or I haven't encouraged to tell my husband or wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. Yeah, and then of course that lightness, then it gives what I call a permission environment for them people to feel at ease to share other things. And then what you've got is a connection in the room that it's actually a safe place to share things and interesting,
Yeah, I really like this whole the literary philosophy that you're talking about, because I think I go back to school, right? I go back to school and I think of the teachers that I loved. It wasn't the subject they were teaching. It was nothing to do with the actual curriculum. It was all to do with who they were, how they taught us, how they treated us, the environment they created in that classroom. And I went to a state school. So we got a state school. It's a big room. We'd have classes the 30 to 40 kids sometimes, and they're big classrooms at that time. And to create that environment where, and I actually then think about it now as a sort of more fully formed adult, where you go, that's a one man, like orchestrating all of those people. And I think most coaching environments have sort of some form of ratio where it's like you can't have more than 16 people to one person, and then it sort of disconnects. But you think, wow, how he just literally, this one teacher, his name was Mr. Shepherd, right? And he was so good at holding a room, and everyone loved him, absolutely loved him. I don't know many people that had been taught by him that wouldn't say he was one of their favourite teachers. And he just made you feel like you were one of his mates. You went in there, and if he did say something that was to shut the room up, whatever, you listened. You instantly listened. Whereas there were other teachers you might challenge, or there might be a bit more friction because they hadn't created that connection, that bond with them. And what this is talking about, I think people miss. I think people don't create that too often. And I'm curious to know what you think might be some of those reasons why they wouldn't create that. What would possibly be the reasons why coaches would feel or would struggle to create that connection like that?
Well, first of all, I wonder whether he'd actually rang Mr. Shepherd and told him, because I had a geography teacher there called Mr. Prim, and I was told to ring him up, and I rang him up in 2010, 25 years after he taught me my geography retake, and he retired, but he remembered me. And, and if it made, he was surprised to hear from me, but 25 years ago, I've never forgotten the impact he had at a very important time in my life, crucial time. And I sometimes wonder whether we are, whether we find time to let those people know exactly how they made us feel, because that's so enriching, and that's that teacher, Mr. Shepherd, will have hugely influenced people at a critical time of their life in subjects they may not love, confidence they may not get elsewhere. And what I suppose your question is, why don't we find time? Well, because I think there is a tendency to feel we're in a race to learn. Right, marks, get set, go. Let's go. We've got a curriculum to do. We've got a session to plan. We've got a season to prepare for. Yep, I know that. I don't find that less important, but that bit comes after the first bit. If you've ever been to a physio or an osteopath, for example, those first few moments are about listening to, they want to know your backstory. They don't want to know you've hurt your knee. They want to know a little bit more about you. That actually will lead to why you hurt your knee. And then the drive to why you want to get better so quickly, or what you want to get quicker for. It isn't, it's never be an onerous process. I mean, if you meet somebody for the first time, how do we connect? We connect through conversation about one another, what's happening in your life, what's happening in mine. Teaching, coaching should be absolutely no different, because, I don't mean this to be I'll give you an example where somebody said to me, I want to do an Ironman. And I said, why do you want to do an Ironman? I said, because I want to be a triathlete. I said, well, you'd have to be do an Ironman to be a triathlete. There's something deeper there. Something really deeper there. And I said, no, not really. I said, well, there's got to be something there, because to sacrifice so much time to one goal, there's got to be a real meaning behind it. It's got to mean something to you. Because if it means something to you, the training is easy. If it's, I feel I should do it, it will break down. If there's an inner drive to do it, then it's easy. It doesn't mean the training is easy. It means that on tough days you go through it. So, ask the backstory to people. Connect, how many times have you walked past somebody you worked with, and I bet there's something you share that you've never found out. I did I won't mention the school, but it's a lovely school. I went into some staff, worked with their staff, and their two teachers, and we talked about music, and I said, I can't remember, gave them that activity that was kind of spiritual about music. And the physics teacher and the you call it home economics now, but there's not sure what the common term is for that. But they had both been at the same Motown concert the week before. They worked together for 12 years and they never knew each other had the shared love. My work was done in many ways, and I want to go back in there a year on, find out how they found out how they're connected. So, the art of, I work in professional cycling, and you're going to be with, and then I work in professional rugby as well. And, in professional cycling, you are away from your family for 200 days a year. It's quite important that you look at that person beyond the athlete. What doesn't mean that you want to be intrusive about their life. Just understand, share those conversations that are not performance conversations. They're just about life.
I think of there's this quote by John Wooden, which is a good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually so much deeper and truer than just that quote itself, because I don't think my personal belief of the art of good coaching should not be about that I leave these people with the skill sets to perform in the arena that they're in, because it is, one, it's not guaranteed they're going to get success, because even if they are the best ever, like the GOATs of whatever domain they're in, everyone has a loss percentage. No one's 100%. So there's going to be moments where they're not going to win. And I've always pondered over the thought of people talk around whether the journey is the destination, but actually the company, I think, that you have along the way is even more important. So those relationships that sit alongside all of that, and just everything that I've had or I see now or what I try to be is, right, how can you leave these people as better human beings? Because their sport will end. We need to not only just equip them for just sport, but also equip them for life. But probably in doing that, we will make them better athletes. They will just be that. And I'm curious to know what you think, where you believe in that is, can you create good human beings and great athletes at the same time?
Absolutely. I think that the two go hand in hand, because we want to be treated as a person first and the athlete second. I've been to some environments where there's a hierarchy in the room, and it's like I'm a level 4 coach and I'm a level 1 coach. So I changed the question, and I made people leave the room and come back in the room. And I said, when you introduce yourself this time, introduce yourself as a difference you make to other people, not a level you work at. Because right now, the most important coach in the room is one who coaches my daughter, and she's 6, not level 4 coach.
Yeah.
It's about reframing what your role is. Is my role? Yes, my role is a high performance. But you know what? I coach 6-year-olds. If I come back in 10 years' time and they're still doing the sport they did with me, and I set them on that journey, well, I have been a part in that journey that has, I sparked the love in it. My daughter does downhill mountain bike racing. She didn't do that at 6. She loved riding a bike. She never knew that 8 years on she'd be doing that. The love is what sparks that. If you get love of something, that's the energy, and that sets alight that path of engagement and pursuit of it. So your levelness of coach, yes, is a recognition of where you're working at and obviously an achievement to get to that level. But just think about, how would you answer that question? What difference I make to other people? And in that journey which you talk about, sometimes that journey has different significances for people. It can be a journey of overcoming. It can be a journey of setback, and you mentioned about resilience. I'm really determined. It could be a journey of pure ambition. I've always wanted to do this, and if you understand that drive, that individual, then you orchestrate and react with individuals in a very different way. You know, you're not have a room full of one size fits all people. You've got a room full of varying degrees of motivation, and explore that. And then also, if you think about the journey that you and I have been on in our separate ways, all the people we've met, and when you mentioned John Wooden coach, you know, great coach changes somebody's life. Well, I met a great coach who absolutely changed my life. You know, and there's two particular coaches who have real significance. One I'm still in touch with, you know, over 28 years on, you know, only on a karaoke stage in Winchester with a broken ankle, singing My Way. And there he was in front of me, this legend coach I'd heard so much about, and that's so embarrassed. You're the legend, that's Mick Critchell. And he's one of my greatest friends, greatest influences. So yes, he changed my life. You know?
Do you think that, I was going to say, do you think that people run away from this focusing on the human being first because of this potential imposter syndrome they may feel and need to force that credibility over? And it's something that I was really interested in asking you around. Where do you believe the balance between qualification and experience lies? And there's probably another thing that I'll layer on top of that in a minute, but many people are, I think, too quick to sort of slam their qualifications, the reason why they're in the room, or like what they've done. Here's my list of who I've worked with, bang, bang, bang. And then actually you miss that human bit, which is, well, what have you gone through? Like, how can I connect with you, and where can I see myself in you, sort of thing, and how can we sort of bond in that way? So yeah, where do you lie with the blend between qualification and experience that coaches have?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're doing at the moment, but there is a feeling when you walk into a room that we have to validate ourselves to the audience the first time, you know. So there can be a feeling that you walk into a new group, you've got to validate yourself straight away by saying something or doing something. I am this and I've done that. Now, you've done that, great, but you haven't done it with the group in front of you. They have no experience of you. So their only validation of you is their experience of being with you. You know, if I have taken a team and we won a league, well, I haven't won a league with you. That's there, that's okay. But the validation comes from my experience of you. So we talk about philosophy at the beginning. I always think, you know, it's a long way back to the legacy book by James Kerr, but it is very true. You know, what would others say of you is sometimes a better reflection of saying I am. So qualifications are important, absolutely. And I work with national governing bodies where we want coaches to get qualified. We want them to get better. We want them to understand more about coaching, give people better experiences in a safe environment. And I always say, don't let the ceiling of the coach be the ceiling of the athlete. You know, I stopped learning. Therefore, the person I'm learning can no longer get beyond that because I haven't upskilled. If we want athletes to get better, then coaches should get better. Coaches should learn informally, read, listen, pick up ideas, and also formally have those qualifications. So I don't think there isn't any thing about being qualified. I think it is important, absolutely. But the imposter syndrome, which I had a question, you mentioned it earlier from somebody when I was in a course just before Christmas, and the guy said, "Look, I've never ridden Tour de France. I'm worried that I'm in this role." And I said, "Well, you don't have to ride the Tour de France to have that role. You have to know how to work with people. You have to understand how to work the dynamics of the relationships with people. Obviously, you have to understand the sport. You've got to have some intuitive response to that individual in front of you. And that comes from experience. We know that the greatest footballers don't always become the greatest managers. That is proven time and time again. So I sort of given quite a lot there, but I would say when I'm introduced to groups, I don't always like to be introduced by what I've done. I like to say what I'm there for, and then use in my presentation examples from my story where appropriate. If I walk in the room and say I'm the funniest man in the world, I've got to make everybody laugh straight away. Okay? That's funny to other people, but not to these people. So I bring my experience to the room, but I want to know about the group I'm teaching to enable me to then work with them. And then over time, those little moments, those noticing moments where you give feedback, where you encourage, where you take somebody on a visit and they go, that's true, I haven't thought about that. Whatever it is, that is the validation you get from the people.
It was interesting. I had a couple of students get in touch with me via social media, and they are sports psychology students. So they're doing either their undergrad or their masters, and they were then looking to go into employment. And they follow me on social media, but they were then asking around how they get into certain institutions, how do they get jobs, how do they sort of get work. And I mean, I started the conversation by saying, like, look, I'm in the trenches with you. If anything, like, I'm not here. I'm by no means, and I didn't go down sports psychology. I'm in performance psychology and doing that route, but it's sort of same but different. But they were saying, what is the most important thing really to get these roles, and how do I do it? What do I need to show? And I just said, like, look, your qualifications will get you into a room. Like, no doubt, they might get you the interview, but do not discount the story and the way you can be relevant to those people in the room. And it is leading again with this idea of story, like, what is it that you've gone through? So if you were trying to, and I asked them, what level of sport have you played with? So, well, I played junior representative football, but I now want to work in a professional football club. So I don't know whether I can work in that environment because I've not played at that level. I was like, well, you don't have to have played there, but if you're going to talk to, whether it's an academy or whether it's like a junior setup to begin with, tell them some of your stories, like what went on with you. And if you're trying to teach, whether it's like a mental skill through, it might be self-talk or it might be visualization, whatever it is, like, have you tried using it? Have you seen it work with someone, or where have you seen a story of someone else work? Use that power of story to create that connection with them. And then this sort of leads on to my next bit, which is I hear another form of coaches, which are probably older, that are a little bit cynical in their thinking, which is that I'm not getting into those rooms due to the fact that I don't have the experience and I don't come from this environment. So if you have a coach that has that mentality or is having that experience, what would your advice be to someone like that?
Yeah, I do realise that in professional sport there is a lot of roles given to those who have performed the highest level in the village. You know, we're looking for an assistant coach for the first team, so we'll get an ex-first team player. And that happens in all sports in varying degrees of success. And you can understand why they make those appointments. But to those people who haven't kind of had that high performance background, you know, I always say to students, open days, and people I work with is, what's your and? And they say, what do you mean? I say, well, you got a degree in sports psychology and what else? And they say, I don't understand. Well, you know, I won't name the team, but I want to work with professional rugby teams. And they spoke about the summer when students graduate, and their influx of letters from people who'd been to a certain university and saying, I've just graduated from University X. And the not written response, but the response that the guy who I knew in there looked at and said, well, what's the and? What's your and? And if everybody's done a degree in X, surely the only way we can differentiate those people is the additional things that those brought people to their colours. So I love traveling. I did quite a few years of just traveling, and that's a rich story to have with somebody, because it gives you breadth, culture. It speaks of you as a person having confidence and awareness. So, and even if it's something like, I know a coach, a high performance coach, actually who's self-taught the guitar, way back. Now, he didn't get the job he's got because by doing that. But one of my questions was, I was fascinated how he taught himself the guitar. Didn't have a coach. So he's got a real understanding about learning. So therefore he's going to have a great understanding with athletes on a one-to-one. But it's the and wherever your and is a point of conversation that will get you into the room alongside the qualification. But it will be a conversation starter with the person in front of you. Who knows what you may connect with? Yeah, I mean, I left my job when I graduated and went to New Zealand for 3 years. First thing I did was join a rugby club. English person and New Zealand rugby team. That's interesting. I didn't get I was welcomed with open arms. That wasn't my story to get my job, but it certainly is, my and bit.
I really like that. And it was something that when I transitioned out of cricket, it was something that I'd really tried to, well, weirdly enough, it was actually something I did becoming a professional cricketer. Was I found it really important for myself to have my own USP as to why, when whoever's either trying to sign me in a contract, or at the very early stages when I was sort of 14, 15, trying to get into trial setups for county age groups, but I needed to have a USP. I needed to be unique. I needed to have something. And I remember sort of sitting, I was in a gym, and I now really vividly remember this, just sitting there going, right, what makes you different? What makes you different, Lewis? And I'm sitting there like, and I'm sitting there going, I've got nothing. And I had my condition. So I'm like, well, I've got this condition, but that's got me on the back foot initially physically, but actually it puts me on the front foot because I'm probably resilient to overcome some things, and I might be braver in certain situations. So, okay, I've got that. That's unique. And then I start going a little bit further. I'm like, well, what skills can I be slightly different at? Well, I don't. But then you get into a comparison race, and I'm like, well, I'm not as good as them. I don't have the skills like them, but I'm left-handed. Okay, I'll take that. And it was something as simple as going, I'm left-handed, and that was where I started. And as I've grown up, and I continuously tried to do that, find out what your USP can be. How can I have my and so I would continuously try to add those in. So every year, whether I'm adding a new skill, I've got this extra skill, or it was me going to Australia when I was 18, having all these different experiences, then I would add maybe a characteristic. I need to be a better teammate. I need to be empathetic. I need to be caring, whatever it is. I need to be more hardworking. Adding those in, and then get to retirement, and then you lose the sport. It's like, right now I'm no longer trying to be a professional athlete. Now, what is it that I want to do? How do I try to get where I want to get to? And I listen to, and I personally use his app, Sam Harris, Waking Up. I promote my own app, but I use his app for myself. He spoke in a podcast about how he's a mindfulness meditation teacher and a neuroscientist. And he openly admitted, he's like, I'm not the best meditation teacher in the world. I'm not the best neuroscientist in the world. But put them together, I could possibly be the best one combined. And I was like, that is neat. And I then realized, I sort of sat down and went, well, what is everything that I've done? So I've overcome my condition, become a professional cricketer. I've become a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, breathwork coach, PT. Like, I've done all these different experiences. Then I've traveled here, done that. And then you if you sit down long enough, is where I'm getting with this, is that if you sit down long enough, you can find your ands, you can find all your unique elements that come up to you. And then if you can't find them, start making them. Like you said, I mean, I'm learning the guitar, so I'm self-teaching myself the guitar, and it's a fun experience, right? I'm left-handed. I couldn't find too many people that could teach me left-handed, so I was like, right, screw it, I'll just learn it myself. And then that gets me I mean, even to the point where if you're going out on a date with someone, it's like that's a conversation piece, right? It's something to start, and it's almost like starting your coaching relationship with people is like dating. They got to know a little bit about you first before they really want to get into a deeper relationship with you. So I think for people who I find always are struggling to find out what makes me unique, how can I be unique? I'm not as good as these people that I see out there on TV, and if you're a coach, I'm not as good as someone on Netflix or whatever it is. It's like, well, you will have a story somewhere. You'll have these bits about you somewhere. You just got to try and find them. Like, and it, for me, it didn't take too long. Once you start listing things out, you're like, oh, geez, I've done a bit.
Yeah, and don't sing someone else's songs. Don't try and be anybody else. Like when we first spoke, I was more interested in your resilience than anything else. You embody resilience. Like, I want you in the room to talk to people about overcoming. That's a wonderful gift when you can say to people, yes, here's my story, but I understand where you are, I understand what you're going through. That relatedness is absolutely critical. How can I relate to you? I was you once. I'm experiencing what you're experiencing. That's just a great attribute to have. Far better than, if I would say this, not better than qualification, don't mean that. But hand in hand is understanding. And when I talked about the 3 themes which we spoke about prior to this, this one thing which is really important to me is understanding someone's experience. How close can we get to the experience of the person in front of us to be better with them? I think of an example now. Sometimes students will get to their degree and they say, but what do I do? Do I go traveling for a year, or do I take this job? And I say to them, well, talk to me about both, and then I'll tell you which one to do. And they start to talk, and because they know I've done some traveling and and they start to talk, and I say, I know the answer. I said, how do you know? So, because I watched your face when you were describing both, and your face was lighting up when you spoke about going to Australia, and it was okay when you talk about this job. So you gave me the answer. And that relatedness of that conversation was not about qualifications. It was about an understanding of that person in front of you. And if you can have that, and you mentioned just now, relationships, dating, coaching, psychology, it is all about that relationship that we build with people. And I do remember the story, of in one of the books I was doing about creativity, but it's about the director of the film Ghostbusters. When they're looking for a lead character, they'd hold these parties, and all the agents of actors would say to me, you need to go to this party. And so the director of the film went to the party. He didn't tell anybody he was the director of this film. He was just looking and speaking and interacting with people until he found the right person. Because he knew if he told him who he was, he wouldn't get an authentic dialogue. He'd get somebody that'd be telling him, so excited to tell him about who they were. And then that's how he found the lead character for the Ghostbusters.
Yeah. It's
the authentic conversation with somebody, some connection, something, and you know what, I can work with that person. So wherever your and is a differentiator. It's the start of a conversation, and who knows? Look, it's a random example, but I'm a Sheffield United supporter. Last year, I took my daughter to the Cup semi-final. I went to the ticket office at Bramwell Lane, and the guy said, "Have you been to any matches this season?" I said, "We've only been to one." So I don't know. We can show you one because it's all about getting points from previous matches. And I said, "Oh, it's a shame because the last time I went was the Cup semi-final when Sheffield Wednesday played Sheffield United in 1996. I can't remember, it was 96. Anyway, a long time ago." And I was just passing on the way up to the Leeds, and he said, "I was at the game. I remember it." And we spoke about I walked out with 2 tickets because he knew that I was that genuine supporter wanting 2 tickets. You could see how important it was. I took my daughter to the Cup semi-final against Man City. You could tell in the way I was talking to him. I wasn't swinging the lead. I was absolutely just recounting something that he could relate to. Now, the qualifications are important. I would never let my daughter be coached by anybody without a qualification. In the sport he does is pretty hairy. So that's always the first part, because it says to me that I want to do this sport. I want to be good at it. I want to be a good coach. I want to explore learn from people who've done the sport a long time, but doing a course, but also enrich myself with other things as well, whatever they are. Whatever they are.
I'm reminded by the story of Andy Hurry at Somerset. So he was the head coach at Somerset when I was playing. I think he's director of cricket there now. And when people tell me about, well, I don't know if I can get to the top because I haven't played the game at the elite level, I always use him as a reference point. And he, from my knowledge, was a military fitness instructor and had played cricket, but he didn't play at first class level. Now, the era in which he ended up coaching Somerset was an era of just greats. I think every year they came second, which, unfortunately they didn't win for themselves, but they came second consistently, and that's an insane level to stay at. And they had England players. I mean, you're talking people like Marcus Trescothick, Nick Compton, overseas after overseas player coming in, the international players, Josh Butler, Lewis Gregory, growing up there, the Overton brothers. And these are unbelievable players. And I always just used to think, going, how's he commanding a room where you've got Marcus Trescothick, England great, that there's nothing he doesn't know that someone like him can't add, that Andy Hurry's going to add in. And I thought, what is it how's he going to be able to hold that room? And then you would turn up to a game, and it'd be 8:30 in the morning. You walk into the ground, and as you go into the ground, there's a gym, and their gym's all glass wall. And I kind of know why now, but there's all glass walls. And he is in there pumping iron, and he was in serious shape. He has got a work ethic that's through the roof. And you realise they levelled with him at that. Just his work ethic alone was something that they went, okay, this guy's serious. This guy means business. And for them, that was the elite level of it. And my thing I always then say to people, and I'd be interested to know how this lands for you, is that I don't believe in order to get to the very elite level, you have to have played at the elite top, at that elite level. However, if you haven't played there, then there needs to be some other criteria around you that is elite, that really is elite. And we're talking about the more, I guess, softer skills that you might have. It could be your organisation, it could be your work ethic, it could be your care and diligence into what you do. That has got to be, in my opinion, elite in order for you to get, which undoubtedly will happen, you will need to get that respect from the room. And that comes from athletes when they go, this person's serious, this person really cares. And then it almost dissolves away that idea of, well, they didn't play at our level.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it current? I mean, I wonder how many people knew Jurgen Klopp's playing career.
Yeah, I funny enough just did a video on him actually. So he played at Mainz, and then he just went straight into coaching.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not really, don't follow football very much, but I obviously know him. I have no idea who he played for.
He played at Mainz for 11 years, and then went straight into coaching. He literally retired, finished his playing career, and went straight into coaching. And then he took them to the Bundesliga. So he played a bit, but he didn't play I don't think he played Bundesliga very, very top level, where he eventually then had all his success with Borussia Dortmund, and then eventually now being at Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that from experience of standing in front of people and never having been at the level they've been at. But I've been able to do is to bring something that they don't know, and bring my knowledge into their world, which they didn't know about. I'm never going to talk to a group of professional cyclists about cycling, really, because, I raced, it's okay, but I didn't ride the big races. be ridiculous for me even to use that as a conversation starter. What I bring to the room is my knowledge that I know will land in their world. And that has, fortunately been in this for, I think it's 10, 11th year now with those, and an understanding of this transition from writer to sport director or from player to coach. I understand the skills that they will need to do that job. And they're not about cycling, because I don't talk about cycling or rugby. It's about the skills. We spoke at the beginning about relationships, connection. Who's in the room? How can I connect with you? How do I know that you have taken time to understand me beyond what I do? That's a really important part. And so this validation of you being able to stand in front of that room, as you just said, is not about playing cricket. It's not about being the best cyclist. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of coaching people and the philosophy that you knit with it, which is, for me, is a big part around empathy, trust, which is critical. Trust meaning safety. So I'm safe to share things with you. If you ask me to do something, I know that if I get it wrong, that I won't have negative consequences in terms of feedback for you. So all of that blended in is what validates you in front of those people. And as I said before, the validation then just comes over time. Because what happens is that win, lose or draw, rain, sunshine, whatever you have, it's how you react to those circumstances with those people continues to validate you with them. I've got a player, next player at my local rugby club. He's currently with the NFL draft, Reece Summit.
Right.
He stayed at my local club, Basingstoke. He's huge. He spent most of the time just, and he's working, getting through his rehab and his exercises and training. All of that time, I didn't know he was going to do what he did. I knew he was interested in it, but my relationship with him was growing around not American football. It's around me just helping him to get fitter, rehab, work on different things he needs to get better at. And so that is something that grows with the people you coach. You don't walk in the room and transform them straight away. And don't walk in the room and think, I better do something amazing now to capture them. Because it doesn't work like that, from my experience.
So how do you spoke about this at the very start, your coaching philosophy? How, and I've heard you say coaching is about letting go, but how do coaches create their own philosophy if they currently don't have one?
So what's one of the first things we do in my course at uni is the module around coaching philosophy. That's part of a module. You can start by saying things, what's important to me? What was important to me when I was an athlete? And they'll list off things like building confidence, enjoyment, being positive, trusting, authentic. They might not use the word authentic, but be the person you are. Don't put on a mask like you're on stage, because you can't wear it all the time. Whereas you can wear you all the time, because that's who you are. And then you say, right, okay, so what would you like people to say about you? And they write exactly the same thing as what they valued in a coach. So that's how you start it. And then once you've got some foundation of what's important to them, give them some areas where you think, well, what would you do now? How are you going to feed back? How will you include everybody in this? And then we move around different things where I'll give them examples, like noticing. Noticing is really important. You mentioned about Mr. Shepherd in your classroom. There's a class of 30 people. Try where possible to interact with everybody at some point, even just say hello to somebody. It's about creating your own philosophy on the foundations of behaviours that will guide your decisions. So, for example, let me just give this example about feedback and conversations. At a local club, we spoke about streaming. So now they've got this A team and a B team, and that separates friends who joined the club together. Now one's an A team, one's the B team. And some of the players were told, "Oh, you're now in the B team. You're not big enough, strong enough, fast enough." And I said to him, "What would you want to be said to you if you're in the B team?" And they said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you've just told somebody you're not big enough, strong enough, fast enough. Imagine that's you. How would you want to be told?" And so we spoke about that. And I said, why don't you say this? What do we need to work on to get you to the first team? Different conversation, because it gives optimism, hope, aspiration, partnership. What can we do? At least we can try. At least you're not. The conversation is about you always being in the B team, and the A team is some distant goal. And so when you put people in situations that they experience, and when they are faced with giving that experience to somebody else, they're much more understanding of it because they've gone through it. I was told this once. I know how it felt. I really want to make sure I'm the same with somebody else, or I never want that to be said to me. So it emerges. It emerges from experience. It emerges from wanting to learn. Emerges through a little bit of self-awareness, from feedback from others, if you've got a coach, mentor, or just a critical friend. And it kind of molds itself into a way of being where you don't have to wake up and think, right, I've got to be positive, enthusiastic, build confidence, think success, and create memorable experiences. I don't wake up with that. It's part of your DNA, I suppose.
There's something that you've said there that makes me think about how often coaches are vulnerable and how much power that can have. And I was writing down a question that a friend of mine had just, funny enough, before we jumped on this podcast, I was having a conversation with her via text, and I was explaining a relationship I got going on where the other person's had something really challenging going on in their life, and I didn't know how to navigate it. I was sort of, I don't want to force anything on them at the moment because there's so much going on for them, but I also want to talk to them. And she said, just ask the question, like, what do you need from me right now? And I thought about that then in a coaching context in sport. And I thought, what an amazing question that might be for a coach to have actually said, what do you need from me right now? And that also requires this level of vulnerability to say, well, I don't necessarily know the answer to that question right now because I need you to give me a little bit of insight. And it also then reminded me of a conversation I'd heard you have where I think you said, how would you like to learn? You said, how would you like to learn today and in a classroom? And so I think there's something to be said about coaches being courageous enough to be vulnerable in saying, I don't know right now, and I need a little bit of input from you, but I'm going to do my best in order to help you out. And that's not to say I don't have all the answers. It's to say that I need this to be a partnership. I need to, in order to get the best out of you, I want to know how you want to work and vice versa. And I kind of think back to some of my coaching and think, you didn't really get that question. You just got, right, this is how it's going to happen. Mold yourself to this environment. And arguably there are some times where you need to do that. There are some non-negotiables you got to do. You got to mold yourself, get involved. But that's not every time. It's not all the time.
Well, it's so lovely to hear that, because, what you've just said was absolutely, for me, so important. What do you need from me right now? Sometimes, this empathy piece, because what you've just said is very often a question that comes alongside someone who's had a setback. Now, we can't solve it, we can't cure it, we can't undo it, but we can sit with that person and navigate our way with them around what they need from us. And if it's just silence, if it's distraction, just talk about something else. Tell me about the weather. Tell me what your family's doing. Take me on a walk. Whatever it is, that is so important. And I can give you a coaching example from this. When a similar students at Tasker, they were playing this game in the hall. One's blindfolded with a ball with bells in it, and they have to roll the ball into a goal where there is a goalkeeper who's got a blindfold on. And I said to him, what's the first thing that you're going to say to them? And they said, we told them the rules, told them our name, and how you scored. I said, okay, well, what do you think they need? And that became the next bit. What they needed was orientation. So where am I in relation to the goal? And feedback. How do I go? Because I can't see it. You have to give me feedback. So it's exactly the way that you mentioned it. It's what do you need from me right now? It's not the rules. I need you to have some understanding that what's important to me right now is I don't know where I am in relation to the people. So can you just orientate me? And then can you give me some feedback on how I go on? And that's real athlete-centered coaching. That's real empathy. And it's words. It's not a coaching manual. It's absolutely what you need from me right now. And what you've just said there is taking away one of the things that we said earlier about coaching individual, coaching en masse. And for me, it takes away, Darwinism. I use Darwinism quite a lot, just survival of the fittest. Well, I got here because I toughed it out and others didn't. I think, well, maybe, I wonder how many people would have made it there if you'd spend a little bit more time trying to understand what really made them flourish. It's a book about coaching children, developing children, in terms of learning and coaching. You have the cactus and the orchid. Cactus will survive whatever the conditions. But the orchid, beautiful, will flourish. You just need to know exactly what to do with it. And neither is better than the other. They just have different conditions.
How do we get coaches to access these parts of them that potentially they may not have done before? So if they've gone through a qualification, they'll be heavy on the textbook stuff. They're really into that. Where do you usually guide someone that you think needs to develop this part of their coaching style, philosophy, being, however you want to describe it? Where do you direct them, and what do you sort of encourage them to do?
Well, one of the things is you want to work with coaches, you want to get better. You ideally want somebody who says, look, I want to be better than I am. How can you help me? Can you informally just give me some feedback? I've done that. That's part of my role, my work. I don't actually deliver a formal qualification. I sit and watch coaches and notice things and give them feedback, and they want to get better. And even if something I say to them is they think, yeah, I didn't realize I was doing that, just happened recently, although it's an ouch moment, it's a good learning moment. I didn't realize I was doing that. Yeah, well, at least you know now. And the work that I've done, particularly within the cycling environment with the sport director courses and the diploma course I teach on, is if the people who are the coaches of others can experience what you stand for, they're more likely to be advocates of it when they coach. So when I got a group of coaches, for me, they're all athletes, all learners. So I work with them the way I work with team players and so on. And then when they experience all this understanding, learning, understanding connection, variety of different things in that coaching process, when they experience it, they go, wow, I didn't realize that was so important. And then, of course, they then go out and become kind of like advocates of that experience because they felt it themselves. You know, you went to Australia, put you in a room, you could be an advocate for going to Australia, couldn't you? I went there. I never thought it'd be as good as it was. You know, you got to go to Australia because this, that, and the other. But you can't always deliver something you haven't experienced that has resonated with you. I don't mean always, but those have really landed with me. You know, those conversations, you know, I think deeply about. You know, when I first started teaching, I remember the struggles with how I deal with challenging behaviour. And then I just remember when I had a student a few years ago, I remember this question. And I didn't know how to say to him. I had to think long and hard about it. But I didn't want to go in and say, you're doing this. I wanted to get better at doing that. And I just came up with this question. And I said to him, I've used this before in conversations that I said to him, look, it's taken me 2 weeks to come up with this question. So here it is. When I look at you, what do I see? And he went, messing about. I said, that's exactly it. And from that, we created a great relationship because we just changed how we were. I wanted to get better. I wanted to engage in that person. I wanted to find out how I could work with that individually in a better. So it is not always in a taught formal course. It comes from experiencing things, reading, watching, learning in the most diverse, environments to get better.
There's something that I've found, and it's almost like I did it. It's an accidental benefit that I've found myself in, is the fact of doing this podcast. In the process of early editing it, I have had to sit through hours of listening to myself. And some people, I know so many people hate that. They absolutely hate it. And to me at the start, it was horrendous. Like, I just wanted to get through the episode. I just wanted to shut myself up. I wanted to move on, get it done. But then I started to get a bit more curious about, okay, well, how can I actually improve the podcast? How can I improve what it's doing? Why are the podcasts that I listen to, what do they do well? What do I like about them? What are people saying? What are they doing? And I'm by no means where I want to be, but I am way better than where I was on the first episode of this show. And it's through the fact that I look at it and I go, well, okay, well, how can I improve my inflection in my speech? How can I add a story? How can I actually shut up when someone's talking? There are guests that you can have on that you realize when you listen to a recording back, one of the worst things you can do on a podcast is speak when someone else is speaking, and it creates a horrendous experience. But just in that art of staying quiet and not feeling the need to be saying anything or be heard or be involved has improved my ability to sit in silence. But then that ability has allowed me to create better impact when I give a speech. So if I give a speech, I know that there's a strategy or a mechanism you can give in public speaking where you leave a pause at the end of something and you let something marinate in an uncomfortable few seconds of silence, but it creates power. It's also allowed me to recognize when I speak too quickly. Like my thing is to speed up rather than to slow down, and it's to go the other way. I have too many things going on, but it's taught me that. And then I went one step further, was every time I went and did a coaching session, and it's kind of worked in a real favor, is that I use it for content for social media to develop my work and my business. But I also, again, use it as a coaching tool. I go, how did I speak in that session? How did I respond to, I usually have the camera just facing me so I don't involve, whether it's kids in the room, I haven't got consent, things like that. I would just have it on me so you can hear the questions they ask. And then it's, how did I respond to that? What did I say? Did I wait was I too quick? Was I too slow? Whatever it was, and you just use it as a data point or a way in going, this is how I want to get better. And I would question how many coaches are comfortable videoing themselves to then look back on it. And I learned this whole experience, again, a very early experience I had, which was the Professional Cricket Association. One year had an opportunity to go and jump on a Dale Carnegie course, 2-day course on presentation. And they said, we've got 2 free spots. First person to grab it goes off. Bang. Email replied, I'm going. And I went to this course and it was hilarious. You had to do 7 talks in 2 days on nothing you knew about, a subject you knew nothing about. I think one talk I had to give on a piece of paper, and they recorded everything. And then what they did is they recorded you and they took you to the next room to dissect everything that had gone through, tell you everything you'd done really well. And there was a lot of people in the room that had come from corporate life, and they were directors, they were just egos in the room. It's really funny. But one guy, it was so interesting, they were like, you've got such interesting stuff to talk about, but you're just not willing to talk about it or get it out there. We need to change your style. And he's at the back of the guy who's teaching, Mark, who was teaching the class, he was at the back of the room, and he said, what do you love doing? He's like, well, I enjoy my work, I've got my family, I've got some hobbies. He's like, well, what hobbies have you got? And he's like, well, I play bass guitar. So, okay, well, give this speech whilst playing the bass guitar. And whilst he's doing this speech, he's playing this air guitar. We're all clapping. We're all singing some sort of song that he's trying to sing. But it was, you looked at him and went, he's completely changed his experience of what he's told us. We've resonated with what it was, but it was the art of being able to be comfortable enough to break out of this mold of something you thought you were into something you wanted to be, but doing it through actually viewing yourself and seeing yourself and going, okay, that's not someone I would want to be coached by, taught by, listened. I wouldn't want to listen to that person. So yeah, I would encourage coaches to video themselves.
Yeah, that I think you absolutely summed one of the areas up. In order to get better, we are going to have some uncomfortable moments of realizing what we are like and watching ourselves. Unless I'm not sure what the right word would be, unless you love watching oneself, then watching yourself thinking. So let's take a simple example. Watch something from last summer I did, and I was pleased with it when I was there, but I watched some video and I thought, I spent too long getting the group active. Okay, it was uncomfortable. I was like cringing watching it, thinking that was me. It wasn't that bad, but I had to watch it on my own in a room with no one else. I didn't want anybody else to watch it. So those moments of self-awareness are going to come from what I said before, ouch moments, realizing that we pause too long, we're grumpy, we are speak too quickly, whatever it can be. And I'm not always good at it. I know, because we are emotional people. We're going to have, just moved house, so it's a bit of a challenging time. But a friend of mine said to me, Rich, when you ring me up, make it sound like I'm pleased to hear from you. I said, yeah, I'm grumpy, aren't I? He said, you're grumpy. Now put the phone down, ring up again. Oh, Rich. Okay, little things. It took that moment of self-awareness and somebody telling me, but they told me so I could get better. And we're going to have some moments when somebody's going to say to us, look, in order to get better, you really need to, and then the sentence is fish or something. Just like you've said, how do we come across to others? We can only see that by being an audience member of our own show. And, I listen to this podcast, maybe I'll have those things where I wish I'd not hesitated, been clearer. But when you said about how can coaches be better, comes from you drove that yourself. No one's told you to go to Dale Carnegie course, and no one told you to listen to yourself on your podcast. You drove that yourself because you want to get better. So the internal drive to be the best you can be is something that's not in everybody within coaching. Some people just coach and that's what they do. But to get better takes us to challenging, uncomfortable moments of self-reflection and feedback from others. But they do it with the best intentions, so you don't make a bigger mistake on the bigger stage.
I think a part of my philosophy, a big part of my coaching philosophy now is that I would never ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do or that I wouldn't do with them. And so I have a young lad that I'm coaching at the moment, and I've been hired to help him with his mental strength, his resilience, his confidence, and that's what we're working on. But the mechanism in which I'm doing it is through physical training, cricket training, yoga, meditation. I'm using I'm literally pulling on every lever that I have. But I turned up at his house the other day, and 5 minutes before I was turning up, I just texted him saying, put your runners on. I turn up, I've got my runners on. I was like, right, we're going for a quick 4K run. So we go for a 4K run. We then get back to the house. I go, wait there, open up the boot of my car, grab a 20 kilo dumbbell, give him the 20 kilo dumbbell. I grab the 10 kilo vest, and we go down to the bottom of his hill. And I go, we're going to lunge our way up to the top of this hill. And he needs the physical training, like a part of what we're trying to do was that. But then we get to the top, he's knackered, he's never done something like that before. He definitely won't look at his home hill the same way anymore. But I was like, what did we learn? What did we learn from this? And he was just like, not stop, even as much as it was hurting. And if you were to, I've had S&C coaches on here, if you did to dissect the S&C department of it, it's like, well, it's not a perfectly strategic program, whatever. But the point being was that he did something that was really challenging. He literally stood there and went, I'm willing to do this. I'm in, I'll do that. And then I encouraged him along the way to continue going, but he didn't stop. And that for him, with the overall goal of what we're trying to achieve, which is build his confidence, he has now got a receipt in his back pocket for when someone says, what have you got to show that you're confident? Well, I did this experience. And I got through it. I learned how not to stop. And so but the big point for me was that I wasn't standing at the top of the hill going, keep going, lunge, do this. Now, I'm not saying everyone's got to jump in the trenches if you physically can't do it, but I will never ask someone to do something that I even haven't tested, done it myself, experienced myself, potentially when I was a pro. And that's a big part of my philosophy. And that wanting to learn continuously, when I see these moments where I mess something up, whether it's on the podcast or want to improve on something, I think the way you view it, people get cringy over looking at their mistakes, is because they do have that judgmental lens on themselves, in the sense that and I would question as to, can you just be a bit more curious? So now I have this, I weirdly, and this does probably sound arrogant, is that I will watch myself on these podcasts and I will smile at the moments when I get things wrong, and I laugh at them and I go, what an idiot. But that's a built off my capacity to, I want to always take the piss out of myself, because and that comes from my history of my condition, where I took the mick out of it early on in my life, so that if anyone else did it, it took the power away from them. Goes, well, I already do that, so you're not doing anything I'm not used to. And I think now I just encourage people. It's the be curious, not judgmental. The Ted Lasso, Walt Whitman quote. It's try to be curious as to, okay, I did that thing, but it's idiosyncratic of me, and it's a bit strange that I do that, but I'm willing to try and get better. But I love that bit about me, that I'm just curious by trying to get better, and that for me is the whole piece around that.
I mean, curiosity is interesting. I haven't used it this semester. Maybe I was talking a lot about last semester. curiosity is key. I mean, going back to the athlete you're training with, how much better for him was it? The better for him that you were with him when he did it.
Yeah.
He didn't have to carry 10 kilos. The fact you were with him, and what did you say earlier? This thing about empathy piece, just be with somebody. The fact that you're with him, rather than this distant figure.
Well, we changed the dumbbells and the thing. So we did the exact same thing. So I made sure that we both did equal measure, and we could mirror that.
Really, you see, the other thing is, to move back to an army training day, when we got ambushed by one of the raw recruits on a rugby training day, and the guy jumped out of the bushes with his gun, we had blanks, he fired his blanks, and he said, "Right, drop them, give me 200 push-ups." I said, and I stopped, and I said, 200? Serious? It's like, I know a little bit about exercise. I was never going to be able to do 200. So we haggled him down to 50 in the end, because we could do 50. Because he'd picked this arbitrary figure up out of the air. We were never going to do. So the fact that you did that with your athlete gives you that feedback that you can adjust it because you were with him. You know what it feels like. So you know what he is experiencing. You know a way to lift it, stretch it, take it back. And going to curiosity piece is, I'm working with students now, and they can choose a film documentary to critique on sport. So we've looked at things like South of the River, we looked at the playbook, just examples. I'm interested in what they're curious about, because curiosity is key in learning. How can I get better? Where can I go to get better at what I'm doing? And if you get curiosity in a learner, then it's easy. How do you spark curiosity? And, I didn't go to it. I remember a coaching course years ago invited actors from a theatre to work with coaches, because coaches are on stage, to get them to feel like what is being on stage. How do you project your voice to an audience? What's your mannerisms? So I got a student who's a stand-up comedian. He didn't tell his jokes in class because he's a bit embarrassed, but he said, "I just want to be confident standing in front of other people." So I decided to do this 15, 20-minute slot on a stand-up comedian. So it doesn't matter where we learn the tools of our trade, I'll rephrase that. Don't close your mind to where you can learn from, because you'll always pick something up from somewhere else. And that curiosity, again, the little gems that we get. I remember going on a course a long time ago, 10, 11 years ago, and that talk in the afternoon was a lady who worked in hotels, and it was a long talk, I have to say. But right of it, she just said this: "We train our receptionists at our hotels in Spain to understand the journey of the grumpy people who land at the desk and just want to check in." And then she said, because they start at 6 a.m, getting to the airport, going through that, they've got 3 kids, they get on the airport, blah, blah, blah. Then they got to find the hire car, then they got to find the hotel, and the kids are tired, everyone's grumpy. They come to reception desk. That's their journey. So if they're grumpy with you, and it's the same with an athlete. What's their journey like before they come to us? If they're late at training, well, maybe they're like, what's the reason for being late? No one likes being late for training. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong.
You got to be unique. I think you got to be a certain type of person to do it consistently. And I think that you're not wanting them in your team. But no, I think it's there's so much of what we've spoken about, and as we come towards the end, there's so much of what we've spoken about that you talk about documentaries there, and I have watched. Have you watched Chasing the Sun? Have you watched Chasing the Sun? I encourage you to watch that. That's a really, I love that, and they're going to have Chasing the Sun too. So it followed Rassi Erasmus on the 2019 World Cup, and then they're going to have Chasing the Sun too for the last World Cup 2023. But you got such a beautiful insight into how they've done what they've done. I think the best way I could describe it is, and I've had James Kerr on the podcast, of what he did with Legacy. That's a film. They basically put that into film in this scenario. And then another one that I watched recently was Whistleblowers, and that was Yeah, and it was really interesting. One thing that came out of that for me was these referees of the professionalism in which they showed. So kind of goes back to, it's kind of going on to following on from what I was saying, where I would never ask someone I'm working with to do something I haven't done, is that they're trying to hold such a high standard, but they're treating themselves like an elite athlete. They are purely treating themselves like an elite athlete. And it's like, if I want to be in this elite environment, I've got to be thinking like these guys, and that's where they gain the respect. And I have no doubt off the back of that documentary, just the insight that they got through what they face on a social media, the barrage of abuse they get, I have no doubt that there'll be players that will respect them so much more, knowing what they actually do behind closed doors and how much work goes into what they're doing on field. And obviously, I think referees in rugby are the pinnacle officials that we have at the moment in sport. Sorry to any officials that might be listening, but I think the main thing that I think of with this sort of stuff, where you've got all these documentaries, you have got quite literally playbooks in front of you, and yet there is some form of barrier that many coaches find. And I've been to different environments, and it's so interesting that every experience, every room you go into is so totally unique. It's full of different characters. So you can't place what the All Blacks have done into any other environment because you don't have the culture, you don't have the underpinnings of that. But there are some elements that we've spoken about today, the humanistic elements, that if you are brave enough to run with them, I think they will work in many environments. It doesn't matter what the culture is, it doesn't matter what the sport is, they will just work. But for some reason, there's a panic that goes on with people, and they either revert to the textbook, they revert to what they've known before, and they go away from this authentic version of their coaching that they're not willing to engage in. And that for me is always the challenge that I try to put forward to coaches, is be the coach you wish you could have had, and the one you want to be.
And trust your instincts. I think, sometimes our intuition and instinct is overridden by the feeling of what we think is the right thing, rather than what we deeply know is the right thing to do. What's your instinct telling you? And that's when, with experience, your intuition becomes stronger, because you have seen so many different things. You've said the wrong thing at some time, you've learned from that. You've done the right thing at the right time, you've learned from that. You've watched somebody, and all of those experiences are never wasted, as long as you learn from them. And you're right, it's don't take the All Blacks culture into English rugby. Don't work. What can I learn from you that would sit well with me? And all of those environments, everything you've watched, one thing that comes in is always about people. You watch those playbooks and those films, I don't think I've learned anything tactical about any of them.
No.
Because they're just a blur. And if they are tactical, well, don't take it from the All Blacks and put it into the local rugby club, because it's too much. But what could you take that could sit with where you're at? So all those things are important. And I will watch Chasing the Sun. I do hope there's not a Chasing the Sun 3, because that means that England wouldn't win the next World Cup. But we'll hope. But yeah, it's, and this is what I've asked the group to do. I said, look, whatever you watch, learn something from that to be able to bring back. I don't know if you watch Free Solo.
Yes, yeah.
In that, there's so much you can learn from war.
I took something from it and I use it. Alex Honnold talks about in that, where he maps out the routes so strategically and he visualizes them and he runs them through his mind so much that he said, I have such confidence about doing it that I would I could have 80,000 people behind me and I would just turn around to them and say, watch this, and then climb. And I use that mantra now. I use that mantra for myself. So if I'm giving a talk, it's a part of my pre-talk process that I have. I have a quick breathing technique that I do. I say, I have one about saying how lucky people are to have me, so that I don't feel fearful of going on. So it's kind of, again, a bit of a confidence booster. And then I say, watch this. And that reminds me of all the practice that I've put in to deliver that talk. And it came from that.
well, it's the only thing I shall hold that, and I shall tell them that when I see them next Friday, that you've told me about that, learning from that film. There's always something you can get, this informal form of learning. What can I learn from around me that I've picked up alongside what is expected of me in this role?
Some people trivialise it, though, sadly. I think some people trivialise it. For the Chasing the Sun, I've seen England rugby pundits sort of sweep it under the carpet and go, got Chasing the Sun. And I go, well, it worked. Like there's something in it. And
we had Building Jerusalem. That was the documentary after the World Cup that we ran. So, it's their story, and if it works for them and it's their story, then who are we to criticize it? It's fascinating. Like I said, you can always get one thing from it. And I do remember, I don't want to say too much, I may get this wrong, but I do remember that there was something on the shirts of the South African players. Each player, I think, maybe when they played France, I think they had the names of all their family members.
They had images of family members on each one. It's a viral clip that came from it of Rassie Erasmus talking about that, and him talking about Makazole Mpimpi, and he was talking about his jersey, and Sia Khaleesi has spoken about it quite a lot, that they're all in the team and everyone's got faces on the numbers, and it's all of their family members, people that have been in the journey, and Mpimpi only had himself on his shirt, on his number, and they said, what's going on there? And you're all arrogant, why have you got that? And he said, no, I had no one. My family's dead, my mum's dead, my dad's dead, my brothers, sisters, they're gone. Like, I don't have anyone. And it apparently the whole room just boom hit them, but that galvanized them. It brought them together. But it was all, again, if you watch the documentary, it's just brilliant how Erasmus does it, and it's done through caring. It was so much to do with the story of how they could connect to the wider culture of South Africa, what was going on at home, use the sport almost like an Invictus type story, and they were doing it in their own way, and it was built off these meetings that they had, but the meetings were, yes, they were strategic, and there would have been strategic meetings done on, of course, but there are these other meetings that go on, or parts of the meetings that happen where the emotion and the speeches come out, and it's the people talking, and there was just so much to be said about that part of it, making all of the work that you're doing have this huge purpose and meaning, and then they'd run through literally brick walls. Obviously, they're huge athletes. They're playing a style of rugby that's ferocious, but they're doing it backed with quite literally an entire nation. Yeah. So it's incredible.
And there is in those jerseys everything about rugby, but nothing about rugby. Everything about the story, your story, your tattoo, right back to the beginning. And that, if who could not learn from that? Everybody has a story. No people in the room have the same story. How can you harness that to the advantage of the team? Yeah, and I guarantee the team will, or if another team tries to copy that, then the authenticity on that is not theirs. It's not, they don't own it. That's the beauty of the All Blacks. The authenticity of the All Blacks it's their culture, unique to them. We can glean bits from it to establish our own. I've just been working with this team before Christmas about culture, and we didn't want to have anybody else's. We wanted to embody who we were, so we created it. And it's great to see already the difference it's made, because we owned it. We built it, we created it. But that story is, again, right back to the beginning about, do we understand the people that are in front of us? Do we really understand where they've come from? I mean, I can't imagine the reaction when you told that story. I mean, it was just taking everybody by surprise. And then how do you harness that? It probably it's almost stuck. self-driven, isn't it? But that one story, who wouldn't want to go out the change rooms there and work for that person and that person to work for them, you know? So,
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. Look, we've been going for a while, and as we wrap up, I usually ask two things of people that are on the show. So is there anything that you are listening to, reading, watching at the moment that's inspired you, that you'd recommend to people?
A book called How We Learn by Nick Shackleton-Jones. That's about learning. Remember the conversation earlier was How We Learn.
How We Learn. Added.
That's what I'm watching. And I'm watching South of the River, documentary about Premiership footballers within a certain part of London. Those are two things at the moment, which I'm sort of, one's a kind of license release just to watch and learn authentic storytelling behind players' journeys. And then the book about How We Learn has already given me some really great themes when I work with coaches and how I teach.
Amazing. And then the last bit is based around how. So the last question that I ask people is there anything from today's conversation that you would provide a challenge to the listeners to take forward?
We spoke about ands. What's your and? We spoke about curiosity at the end, which I think is critical word in learning. I would say go and watch something different that you don't coach, and what can you learn from it? You know, I'm spending my days not at the side of rugby pitches as a coach now. I'm at a downhill mountain bike race. Wow, that's a pretty cool, funky environment to be in. You know, the riders in the start line fist pump each other. So great rivals hug each other at the end and fist pump each other at the beginning. Share stuff on Instagram. They're each other's fans. That's what I got from that. So put yourself in, go to a different setting, sit and just watch.
Brilliant. I love that. Look, for people that are listening that might want to reach out, especially anyone coaching that might have questions following up from this episode, where's the best place for us to send them to get in touch?
Yeah, they can contact me on Twitter at 2willprof, or Instagram, which is at 2willprofessor, which is 2 as in TWO. Or they contact me at the university, so richard.cheetham at winchester.ac.uk, and I'm happy to share some of the things that have helped me a lot, and ideas and questions you've got. You know, more than happy to share some of the things I've touched upon today. And if they want to, I always offer out to come and sit in a session that we do. Then they're more than welcome to come down to university, sit in with the students. They'd be delighted to have them. And I did have somebody who pretended to be a student joining the course, and they weren't. They'd just come up from the Olympics with a silver medal. That was quite cool. Students didn't realise that. You don't have to be that person to come to lecture. You're welcome to come as a guest. No problem.
The silver medal wrapped around their neck didn't give it away.
Yeah, they didn't bring it on. They just were like, they revealed it right at the end. So it's quite a funny story. But anyway,
that's brilliant. Look, Richard, thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation. The time's flown by. So when an episode runs like that, you know it's been a good one. So I really appreciate you coming on.
No, listen, Lewis, I've been delighted to be invited. It's nice to meet you, and thank you very much for really this opportunity, and it's been a great conversation. Thank you very much indeed.